All right. It is 7 p.m. on Tuesday, October 5th, 2021. We are gathered here for our regular evening trustee meeting, first one of the month. I'd like to welcome everybody here. I understand we have an invocation from Reverend Kellums this evening, so I'd ask everyone who's able to stand to please do so and then remain standing afterward for the pledge.
Tonight's invocation was submitted by St. Vincent Ferrer. Heavenly Father, as we begin our meeting, we do so with the awareness that without your divine presence here at the center of our meeting, our work would be empty. Lord, grace us with your wisdom and your vision, that we might be open to your guidance and inspiration. May all of our decisions be for the good of the township and the citizens we serve. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thanks, everyone. Please have a seat. Mr. Porter, would you please call the roll?
Mr. LaBarbera? Here. Mr. James?
Here.
Mr. Weedman? Present.
All right, first order of business is approval of minutes. We have a few things to look at. First, we have the September 21st, 2021 Lighting District public hearing minutes.
Motion to approve.
And there's a second.
All right, and any discussion? Hearing none. Mr. Porter?
Mr. LaBarbera?
Aye.
Mr. Weedman? Aye. Mr. James?
Aye. We actually had two sets of public hearing minutes, so just for clarity, let's separately approve the second one as well. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
And there's a second.
All right. Mr. Porter?
Mr. LaBarbera?
Aye.
Mr. James?
Aye.
Mr. Weedman?
Aye. Next, we have the minutes from our trustee meeting on September 21st.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? Mr. Porter?
Mr. LaBarbera?
Aye.
Mr. James?
Aye.
Mr. Weedman? Aye.
All right, with that out of the way, we come to public comments. Do we have anyone signed up to give comments this evening?
Yes, sir. We have 3 people signed up. First is Ms. Kathy Kugler.
Good
Hello,
evening.
my name is Kathy Kugler, and I live at 7106 Tenderfoot Lane. I'm coming here tonight to speak briefly on an issue dear to my heart, the issue of public safety regarding high-speed chases by the police. In July of 2008, a dear friend of mine lost 2 grandchildren in Louisville, Kentucky, when they were run over by a fleeing car followed by the police. Those children can, of course, never be replaced. It was a terrible tragedy, and a friend of mine. I've read recently of a similar tragedy in Cincinnati and Covington, where a couple on August 2020 died, and they were run over while eating outside, again on a high-speed police chase. So I contacted, their names were Gail and Ray Label. I think it's important to know that it's just not a statistic. These were somebody's grandparents. Very, very sad. So I reached out to Lieutenant Tarr, who's not here tonight, and I told him I would be asking about this evening. I asked him, does Sycamore Township police or sheriffs, however you want to call that, participate in high-speed chases, and if so, under what conditions? He was kind enough to send me all of the administrative guidelines, which is a heavy read. I did read it as best I could. I then asked him, has Sycamore Township participated in any high-speed chases in the last year or so? And he kind of gave me a mixed response, and I emailed him today to kind of clarify, but he's not here. He was very nice, though, to work back and forth with me. He said there were no high-speed chases this year, but there was one high-speed chase. A vehicle had been stolen in Sims Township, and I guess it must have been followed up here in Sycamore Township. So I'm unclear about that. Here's what I would like to ask of the trustees or the police. When would it be acceptable to start a high-speed chase and participate in it? Because we're all at high risk when that's going on. You don't see it coming, and it's at very high speed. You can't react to it, and I know of 4 people who are dead because of it. And are the trustees informed when these high-speed chases, even if they're minimal, Do you find out about it? Do you give a report? Because this is a highly dangerous procedure. So that's what I'm asking tonight, is clarification on when our police would participate or respond to a request to participate. Because I think chasing somebody for a stolen car is not worth it. A car can be replaced. These two little girls and those two adults, those grandparents that are dead and gone forever, cannot be replaced. So that's what I came to ask tonight. So, thank you.
Thank you,
I hope I'll
Kathy.
hear back something. Thank you.
Well, as you know, public comments is not a Q&A
I
session.
understand.
It's an opportunity for comments. But I will note that the board is regularly informed when there's any exceptional police activity or criminal incident or emergency in the township. Typically, the administrator, the fire chief, or someone else involved will let us know. I don't know if Sergeant Sovereign has any comments about high-speed chases. That's something the township contracts with the
Hamilton County Sheriff's Office
to determine some of those things, of course. But is there a policy as to that?
Yes, there is. There's a policy that ultimately the decision relies on the supervisor depending on the severity of the incident at hand. Not every chase is a high-speed chase. And certainly when they get out of hand, the supervisor has the option to terminate it, as does the pursuing officer. Generally, they involve something that's very serious in nature. Although we don't always know what that is right up front. Just because someone's being chased for a stolen car doesn't mean that's the only incident in play either. So we certainly don't generally participate in high-speed chases, certainly not for low-level misdemeanor crimes. I hope that answers at least some of your question.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for elaborating on that. Okay, do we have someone else signed up to give comments?
Yes, sir. Next up is Ms. Tracy Hughes.
Let me note before you start, Ms. Hughes, also, I've noticed some members of the public came in or in the lobby. You're welcome to join us in the meeting room here and have a seat if you'd like. Just please come on in. Thank you.
Hi, Tracy Hughes, 4705 Dunedin Avenue. I have questions about some things that happened at the last meeting, and I understand this isn't a Q&A, so I'm just going to say what I perceived happened, and then if someone wants to chime in. In June, Jack Flume had prepared a scope of work for a traffic study that he was requesting for Kenwood Road in Montgomery. I'm unclear who he presented that to. It was my understanding it was prepared in June. I think it was presented to the trustees. I'm not positive. So he did this. He did not receive any feedback. He got on the agenda for 2 weeks ago, that meeting. He asked me to be here as a resident who was concerned about the traffic. He started his presentation and then was told this had already been submitted just a few days beforehand to ODOT and I believe Hamilton County. So I just wondered what transpired between June when he submitted it and September. Why was there a length of time? If it was important enough, if you were going to pursue a traffic study, he wasn't made aware. My understanding, I mean, he is an expert in the field, in my opinion, and he can certainly prepare a scope of work. Was his scope of work, that work was used without, I mean, he didn't know that it was presented. So, is that common practice? Like if I came and said, I have this suggestion, I wrote this up, you would take my work product and just submit it as the township? I don't know if that's common. So I just am wondering what happened. I have concerns about the timing of it, why it was brought up in June and then there's action taken in September before he can make another presentation. So I thought the timing was a little suspect and I was just concerned about it. So don't know if anybody wants to respond or I can.
Well, I've had those same questions, actually, so I'll ask the question. Tracy, can you explain the course of events here?
So it's not usual because to have a citizen prepare a scope for us is very unusual. We usually hire a traffic engineer to do that. Mr. Flume was asked by Mr. LaBarbera to put that together. We all met back in June. That was not submitted in September. It was submitted sometime in July or August. Okay. It just takes, we reviewed it, we made some slight modifications, we sent it to the county takes time to review it. They get back, they send it to ODOT, it's still at ODOT, so we did not wait till September.
Okay.
In order for that to be submitted.
Just sitting in the audience, that was my concern, sitting in the audience and listening. I'm like, what happened here?
Yeah.
So.
No, I was told at that meeting to submit and
Okay.
to get going, and that's what
Great.
I did. So
Okay.
when I found out that they were coming back, because now, 2 weeks later, after our last meeting, Jack has submitted another scope, which is a little different than the first. So we're looking over that right now, and I'll talked with Jeff Newby at the county also
Okay.
about that.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Tracy. All right, who else do we have signed up, Mr. Miller?
Last up, we have Ms. Stacy Carpenter.
Good evening. My name is Stacy Carpenter, and I reside at 12114 First Avenue, High Point, Ohio 45249. Due to COVID, I was voluntold that I should come and be the spokesperson for this meeting. Let me start by saying I was born and raised in High Point, along with my father, his father, and now my daughter and her family. As a 48-year resident of High Point, I have seen and been a part of watching communal development and social change, but I have also seen it divided by drugs and slumlords. Most of the long-term residents enjoy living in High Point because of the community closeness. When our family's in need, the community comes together to help. The residents plan neighborhood cleanups, benefits, kickball games at the park, and other events. Everyone is welcome. High Point residents work hard to better our lives and our community. We may be a lower to middle class neighborhood, but we pay taxes and vote just like everyone else. I'm here today to speak upon several issues that have been addressed in the past at the formal community watch meetings that were held monthly since about 2018 until COVID hit. First is the drug use trafficking houses. These houses affect everyone in the neighborhood, from the young to the elderly. They bring crime, sanitization issues, slumlords, and are a nuisance. The definition of property nuisance is use of property that unreasonably interferes with others' rights. A nuisance occurs when a landowner engages in an activity that significantly interferes with the use or enjoyment of another's property, or that affects the health, safety, welfare, or comfort of the public at large. The landowners of these drone houses know what's going on due to the property complaints and all the police calls. The Sycamore Township, since it resides under Hamilton County, have criminal activity nuisance ordinance. A typical KNO ordinance states 2 or more qualified incidents, or 1 if the incident involves certain felony offenses over a 12-month period, will lead to a declaration that a property is a nuisance. KNOs are often enacted in response to complaints about the behavior and activity of residents. Documentation of the public discussion surrounding these complaints revealed tensions in their cities. Residents express frustration in their neighbors' behavior and often perceive the city and police response to their complaints to be inadequate. One residence has had 66 police EMS calls as of 9/29/01 in the past 3 years, which include disorderly conduct, petty theft, grand theft, receiving stolen property, possession of drugs, numerous ODs, and the list goes on. On September 24th, around 10:30 p.m., police were called for a disturbance. A lifelong resident of High Point, Eric Whitaker, who resides at 12141 2nd Avenue, was arrested and charged with disorderly conduct and criminal damaging or endangering. I was a witness, as were other neighbors, to this incident, and we can justify that Eric was only defending himself and his property. The occupants who called the police should have also been charged and arrested, as they too were firing a pellet BB gun all day around the neighborhood and driving by looking at residents saying, and I quote, "Hold up, I'm about to shoot something," while staring the neighbors down. The police talked with us, and we showed them a video of the other person involved having a gun during the altercation with Eric. As they stated to the police, they did not have a gun. The police then proceeded to ask why we did not call the police earlier. Here's the reason that I told the police. Nothing ever gets done. Here's an example. The front glass door of my home was shot out in the summer of 2020 by a pellet BB gun, and we had it on camera of the person shooting the gun from the residence. The police proceeded to tell us they could not use the video. I requested a police report be completed and was told a detective would follow up with us. Here we are in October of 21, and I have still not heard from anyone. Numerous police calls have been made. The police come with their lights and sirens. The occupants run and hide. The police drive by, see nothing, and leave. The occupants come out and start up again. Then they retaliate against the neighbors, and then we have to defend ourselves. The occupants call the cops, play the victims, and we are the ones who get punished because we don't run and hide. So I say again, why call the police? Since the incident on September 24th, the occupants have been harassing the neighbors. They ride up and down the street from house to house on their bikes, making rude comments and racial slurs. A call was placed to the police on September 28th at 3:45 due to racial slurs and harassment, and we requested that a report be written up and charges be pressed against said occupant. In June 2019, the state of Ohio, Brown versus Fabrich, declared racial slurs are chargeable for ethnic intimidation, and the Ohio Appeals Court found that the N-word in an insulting manner to an African American person constitutes fighting words, which determined that disorderly conduct can also be charged. This occupant has since been arrested, but that does not stop the rest of them. It just slows them down. The neighbors and I are sure police and the police are tired of dealing with these occupants, with these houses. We're just fed up. We can't enjoy our yards. We can't go outside. We can't let our children ride their bikes in the neighborhoods because we're a fear of being harassed, or have men to look at them space out in their yards and their driveways, or act a fool in the middle of the street, knock it out of the road. The occupancies of these residents, they build out buildings, as I call them, and put up fences, and I use the word fence very loosely, without permits. Numerous tickets have been submitted to Sycamore Township regarding these issues. The buildings and fences are still standing. They burn their trash and garbage in the middle of the night while everyone's sleeping, which leaves ashes all over the neighbors' cars and their homes. The second issue is the homeless in the attics. They use the community park on First Street as their landing spot. They use behind the park, which is the old railroad tracks, and the commercial building to sleep, do drugs, have sexual relations, use the restroom. We have it on video. They live in garages and vacant homes around the neighborhood. Mr. Wiedemann, when you were going around promoting your reelection, you witnessed this firsthand.
I did.
Here's how to get rid of them. Take care of issue 1 and issue 2 will go right with them. Which brings up the third issue, the speeding. There's no regard to the speed limit, which is 25 miles per hour, and no one stops at the stop signs. What can be done? And since we have no sidewalks, kids ride their bikes in the streets and someone's going to get hit. Somebody's going to get hurt. Since it seems the police are at a loss on what to do, the residents want to know what the township is going to do to help correct this. We understand that these issues will not get resolved overnight or may need to be discussed offline. But it has been 3 years or longer and nothing has changed. It's only getting worse. Someone is going to get hurt. We wanted to come to this meeting to address our community concerns, as it seems we are always overlooked. Finally, I'll close with a quote from Coretta Scott King. The greatness of a community is most accurately measured by the compassionate actions of its members. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Carpenter, and thank you very much for bringing that to our attention. This is something we need to do a lot of things about. The neighborhood watch sessions that used to go on were stopped because of COVID. I think it would be helpful for that to resume. We've reopened the building up there. We need to get those going again. Sergeant Sovereign, if you could bring that to Lieutenant Tarr's attention and Mr. Bitterman as well. Let's get that going ASAP, first of all. But That's not a solution to this by itself, of course, obviously. The CANA, which you brought up, that's a new term to me, and that's fascinating. I don't know if that's something as a township we are authorized to do, because townships don't have the authority municipalities have in some instances in Ohio, but we are a home rule township, so we do have sort of a mixture of authority. Maybe there is something we can do. I don't know if Mr. Miller is familiar with that, or Sergeant Sovereign as to that.
I know that we've done it with the Drake Hotel, something similar to that with the Drake Hotel being a nuisance property, and I know that there's been talk about it with the carousel, but I don't know about an individual residence. We've ever had anything like that happen. I don't think we've done anything like that county-wide, as far as I'm aware.
Yeah, and maybe the county does have that authority on the other hand too. But Skylar, are you familiar with the concept, and is it something?
Only kind of on the periphery. So I'd like to research that more.
Let's do that.
On it. You know, I currently, from a zoning standpoint, you know, the township is very much a complaint-driven, process. So we do follow up on the complaints we receive. Sometimes we have to abate them because we don't see the activity taking place, you know, when we get up there. Certainly zoning is a slower process than, you know, other police powers and actual law enforcement. But, you know, if we want to talk about some kind of targeted enforcement zone, working with the community, I'm certainly open to options. But as it stands right now, township-wide, we're complaint-based only.
All right. Well, let's get working on what we can do to be proactive here, because this is clearly a problem in High Point. We also don't have the authority, for the most part, to enact criminal ordinances in a township. We can enact civil fines for certain things, but we have to rely on the county and state law for other things here. If we need to have a special work session meeting to talk about this is worth doing, though, to brainstorm some ideas as to what to do with this. The homelessness also, is there something else we can do to alleviate that?
They're on again, off again homeless. They have people there that they stay with, stay there for a while, and we're aware of many of those people that are homeless. But they also are, as I say, they're on again, off again. They'll stay with somebody for a while, then they'll be out of the house. I know several of the people that would fall into that category.
So if someone's out in the park, sleeping in the park, fornicating in the park, whatever.
That would be an arrestable offense. So catching them fornicating in the park would be something we would have taken them into custody for.
Do they need to be caught in a flagrant delicto?
Or something very close to it.
Okay. We've got this wonderful fiber system and cameras all over the township. Do we have the ability to monitor the parks there for what's going on?
They're not actually in the park. They go behind
behind the park.
The railroad tracks.
They've been camping out on the railroad tracks, if I remember
Yes.
our conversation.
They're building their own houses back
Yes, and I think when we spoke, I don't know if you saw Officer Bitterman did come immediately after that. I called him, and
Right.
but I'm not sure exactly what happened there,
Nothing.
because I know he was walking around with that wire.
Which I had to go clean up because it was stolen and thrown on our property.
Okay.
And I went and cleaned it all up, threw it in the garbage can. They got it back out of the garbage can, and then went back behind the park.
I did give our inspector, zoning inspector, I did give him 7 properties to look at from people that I had talked to relative to alleged drug use, people living in structures that don't have plumbing, a number of things. Included in that was the location behind Americraft, where up on the tracks as well. So he is looking into that.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
I'm sure you see Mr. Kevin Clark up there quite a bit. The black SUV.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
You know, I went to several of those meetings over the years, the community watch meetings, and Bitterman, I know one that the theme seems to be that when they would arrest somebody, that person would beat Bitterman back
Yes.
to High Point, and the court system just let them out.
Right.
So they're not enforcing it. So there's got to be something we can do.
There's not much that we can do. We can only arrest them for the crime. Whatever happens in court happens in court.
Right, and there are evidence
That seemed to be
issues with.
recurring over and
And
over.
that's the other issue, is that when we call the police and they do come, they don't want to make a report because, like they said, they get out before I even get back. So I've kind of wasted their time, everybody's time, and then they come back and they start on us again. And
Well-
again, someone is going to get hurt. I want that on record. And I'm hoping it's not going to be me and it's going to be the other person.
Well, thank you for bringing this to our attention. Keep bringing it to our attention, please. This is not something solvable right here in this moment, obviously, but we will take action on this and hold us accountable for this, please. But as I said, if we need to have a special meeting to talk about some of this, let's do it. Let's brainstorm what we can do, and let's take action here. And let's get a neighborhood watch meeting on the calendar next month, if that's possible, or later this month, even,
tomorrow,
if that's possible.
That'd be good.
Yeah. All right. Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. And is there anyone else who had signed up to speak, or anyone else who?
No, sir.
We need to do that. All right, then. And I will note for the record, typically we limit public comments to 4 minutes, but this was an important issue, and we appreciate you bringing it to us, so we let you go on here, obviously. So thank you. All right. Moving on then to Sheriff's Patrol report. Anything else to talk about?
I think we've covered a lot.
Can I jump in here
Oh,
before the Sheriff's report, because this is involving the Sheriff. And this will seem minor compared to what Stacy just said, but Kate Brower Bell is a resident in Sycamore Township, and she posted on social media on Sunday, for anyone who thinks racial intimidation doesn't happen here, my 13-year-old son, who is himself a person of color, was at a birthday party today at Bechtold Park for a friend of his who is African American. Most of the children attending were African American, biracial, or Hispanic. There was a white woman whose fence butted up against the park. For the duration of the party, she hung over her fence, yelling racial slurs at the children, making repeated grotesque sexual gestures, and draping a Trump sign over the fence. The children she was screaming at were ages 3 to 14, attending a birthday party for a 13-year-old girl. We did call the police to report her, but I'm sharing this here for anyone in the area. I'm so ashamed that this happens in our America. And she gave me the address was on social media on Plainfield Road. And the sheriff's deputy she did report did respond. And the response was situation under control. And that was about it with that. But seeing this, there were dozens of comments on social media, and I told this Kate Brower Bell that I would mention this. This shouldn't be tolerated here or anywhere. But what can be done? I mean,
I'm not specifically aware of the incident you're talking about. I was working on Sunday. Certainly disorderly conduct would fit that category of someone's being that way. The problem with it being is disorderly conduct on one's own property is a very fine line to walk. It's hard to be disorderly in your own property, your own space. Now, if you're intruding or you're going into the park space, that would certainly be something that could be meted out with a fine, a citation. If it's persistent activity, they could be arrested for it. Like I said, I'm not specifically aware of the situation you're talking about, but it sounds like something where something should have been done. I'll have to look into it and see what the actual result was.
I do. There's a street address, and I won't give it to you off to the side, but apparently it's a rental property too.
Okay.
So maybe, Skylar, there's something we can do. Anything we can do with that? Look into that.
So renters and property owners, whoever's the occupant of the property, they essentially have the same property rights, as far as, what they can and can't do on their own property. We certainly don't discriminate between the two types of occupants. So, but yeah, I mean, when somebody's being obnoxious and inflammatory like that, first thing I would do is call the sheriff's department.
Mm-hmm. And they did respond.
I'll have to, like I said, I'll have to look into it. I'm not familiar with the situation. I can't give any intelligent comments on it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, what do you have to report tonight?
We don't have anything specific to report on, anything that's directly impacting the community. We do have the active shooter drills coming up this week at Moeller and at Kentwood Town Center, so if anybody sees any crazy activity going on by the schools, that'll be just drills this week that are coming up.
All right. Any questions for him? I do have one. It may be for you or for Tracy here in a few minutes too, but I had a resident in Heitmeyer bring to my attention that there are some residents who have young kids, and they're concerned about their kids playing, of course, and traffic coming by. So they have those little signs that are the little plastic guy with the flag saying caution kids or whatever. But they've been putting them actually on the street side of the curb, which you're not supposed to obstruct the street with anything other than a vehicle, of course. And the resident asked me to do something about it or bring it to attention of the township. I don't know what there is specifically we can do. We don't want to ticket someone for trying to protect their children, for goodness sake. But what should a resident do who is concerned that traffic is constrained? Should they call the sheriff's office?
If it's obstructing the roadway, they can call us. Chances are we'll just have some words with them and talk to them about
Please
placing
don't ticket
injurious
somebody
material.
for it,
Right.
but, okay. Thank you.
Usually we try to meet something out like that with, a discussion rather than.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. All right. Thanks.
Well, since we have Skylar and we have the sergeant, I was in Dillonville today, and a fellow on Wexford, the corner of Wexford and Mantell, was upset, and a couple of neighbors were upset. Again, it goes back to Deer Park Auto. I called Skylar. Skylar got on the phone with a gentleman to explain things, but they are Deer Park Auto has been doing this, and the guy said, well, if it was a trustee in his neighborhood, it probably wouldn't happen. I said, wait a second. We had a trustee three houses down for 24 years, and it continued to happen. There is a car on Wexford. I was looking at the cars. He said, just look for temporary plates. And there was an expiration on October 3rd on a couple of those. So I don't know if you can.
We can cite them, but once again, that's one of those tricky things. You have a resident that lives there, especially with COVID coming out. They've just recently relaxed the restrictions on going to get your license plates. Those were extended indefinitely until like July this year, so we're just coming out of that period where it wasn't required to go renew your license plates. We've just come out of that period as of the end of July or the beginning of July. So sometimes the temporary plate's a good telltale sign, and sometimes it's not. And once again, we'll get to that situation where if we're going to ticket cars that are on the streets, sometimes it's better to find out if the car actually belongs to somebody on the street. And unfortunately, that is a little time-consuming process. We have to tag the car, see if the car moves, give it a couple of days before we go out there and start towing cars, things like that.
Now, if this does relate back to the auto shop, on the other hand, we have a court order in place that provides for enforcement, Mr. Desai, don't we?
It's just saying which cars belong to the auto shop and which cars are somebody else's that are on the street.
Yeah.
That's what the hard part's always to prove.
I think the court order is only for cars that are on the lot, though.
Is it?
That's correct.
You guys don't.
Okay.
You guys don't actually mark tires anymore, right?
No, we don't usually mark tires. We usually put the stickers on there for the abandoned vehicle tag, abandoned vehicle stickers.
Yeah, there's some.
That way, if
cases
somebody
about tire
sees
marking.
it on their car, hopefully they'll have the common sense or the good sense to move the car.
And you can't impound a car.
Not for something like that. We just cite it for.
There are junk vehicle statutes. As we've discussed multiple times, there's certain criteria that has to be, that we have to be able to identify. It has to be an older vehicle, at least 3 years older than current make. Cannot have current. The tags have to be expired, and it has to appear inoperable. So, and it's not a one or the other. It's
not an easy
all
fix.
three.
No.
Right.
That's why it's been going on for the way it has. It's not an easy fix.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Chief Penny is away on vacation this week. Does anybody have a fire or EMS report to give?
I think you got sent something earlier today about a lady who made a donation of $1,000 to the fire department because of the great care that our guys and girls were giving her mother as she was struggling with illness at the end of her life. And Chief Penny can't remember ever getting, other than plates of cookies and things, but she wrote a very nice note, and you all got copies of it. I'm not going to read it in the public meeting, but
It was very generous of the family and of her, apparently. The
Yes.
daughter said her mother wanted something to be done.
Right.
She really liked our guys, even though they tracked snow in sometimes. So.
And Chief Penny wrote a nice letter back to them.
Oh, good.
Good.
Yeah, excellent. All right. Well, we'll move on here then to roads, maintenance, and recreation. So who's up first for that?
Mr. Petty with a parks update.
Okay. Jason, would you mind stepping to a microphone to do that since we're recording? Thank you.
All right, thanks, gentlemen. I have an update from the Parks Advisory Committee meeting that we had last Monday. We talked about and discussed several different things. One of the things that we asked that you guys approved tonight was the 2022 calendar of events, which basically would be a movie and a concert once a month through the months of June, July, August, and September. The concert would be the second Saturday of the month. The movie would be the fourth Saturday of each month. The dates are not necessarily set in stone. We had some discussion about we may have to move some of the dates around. We didn't want to put our events on the same dates as other municipalities' events and whatnot, but the 2 events a month is what we would like to do now. And also having our own movie screen for the movies. We rented the movie screen, or we didn't rent the movie screen. We paid Funflix to come out and show the movies for us, and each time they came out to show the movies for us, it was almost $800 a time per occurrence. So the movie screen we could get on our own would be just a little over $4,000, and we'd be able to show the movies whenever we wanted to, wherever we wanted to. So I think the advisory committee feels like it's something that would be beneficial to the township to have ourselves. So those were the 2 things that that we had asked the board's consideration on approving. The other thing that I wanted to let you guys know is JT Riley will be leaving the committee. He's actually going to be moving out of Sycamore Township, possibly by the end of the year. So we'll be opening up a vacancy for the advisory committee, and so I'd like to get that on the website and Facebook and all of our avenues. And the student from MND, L. Seeger, I spoke about it a few months ago. She wanted to do a service project in one of our parks. She was going to clean up some trash or whatnot, but we're actually going to have her do some invasive species removal at Bechtold Park on the nature trail. And I worked with Deepak on getting a waiver for them to sign out. So anybody who's going to be there will fill out a waiver, and those are going to be this coming weekend, October 9th and 10th. So other than that, that's all I got. If you guys have any questions.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
The screen that you're proposing to purchase for $4,000.
Yeah.
Will that be able to be movie be played and seen on that in the daylight?
No.
Yeah, I think I noticed a real challenge with us starting in June, July, and even August at 9 p.m. because a lot of kids, for the movies we're showing, a lot of kids are already going to bed.
Mm-hmm.
And parents typically, and I think that might be part of the reason why we had low attendance at a lot of those, because their parents are, or they're not going to stay up till 11 o'clock that night to finish a movie. And so if there's a way we can find to get one of those screens where you can see it in the daylight, I think that'd probably be helpful to be able to start a lot earlier so that we have the ability to. And I don't know. I think originally you were talking about maybe doing the concerts at one venue and the movies at another.
That is correct. Yeah. So my hope is that we could have all of the movies at McDaniel Sports Complex and have the concerts at Bechtold. It just seemed like a better venue. I'd have a place to keep the screen on location at McDaniel. I also have the popcorn machine is at McDaniel. It'd be easier to do concessions out of that building. It's a more wide open park for the movie itself, I think. And I think really one of the things that we needed to do was probably, if we know ahead of time that we're going to do this, we would have a better opportunity to announce it or get it out, on different social media, get on our website earlier in the year than we did this year. So
I know that the screen was facing the west in McDaniel, I believe. And is there a way that we might be able to figure out how to face it in a different direction so it's not the sun is not coming from the west as it sets, and still be able to maybe start a little earlier?
Yeah, we could definitely try. We could definitely try to put it in some different areas.
I'm not sure where that best place is, but
yeah,
you would know better than I would.
We had it in that area originally. That was the least light. So there was a few lights around the pavilion. So that's the first reason I put it there, was because of light. Because any light that is shining close by, it just shows up on the screen.
Jason, the $4,000, that's a full AV kit, right?
Yeah. That's the
projector and everything.
The screen, projector, the PA system. That's everything that you would need to start it up.
So we looked at that projector earlier today. It's a fairly kind of middle of the road projector. You can always go with a brighter screen or a brighter projector to kind of combat some of that.
Is it the projector or the screen or both?
It's mostly a project. It's all about lumens. You know,
Okay.
like a meeting room projector. You want to have for indoors, you want to have 3,000 lumens to
Okay.
kind of combat the lights in
Sure.
here. You know, broad daylight or even dusk. You probably want to amp that up quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the one we were looking at was 4,500, but we can go up from there.
Well, I just think if you want to get good participation, you have to make sure that you start it early enough so kids, you're not starting it after their bedtime's already over and they're in bed, and I think that was one of the reasons why we had limited participation in the past. So
Yeah, and I would imagine too that it was something that was very new to the township. We've never done it before, so I would think the more often that we do it, I think it will be better attended. And with limiting the number of movies that we're going to show, I think we would be able to spend a little bit more money on the movie itself. So if we have our own screen and we're not spending almost $800 to have a company come and show it, we could probably get some movies that just came out last season that might bring attendance up a little bit as well.
I think the jump from 4,000 was pretty high to one that you could do during the daytime. It was a pretty big jump, wasn't it? Like 16,000 or something, some enormous jump for a projector that would do that.
That was for the company to come out and show it. Okay. So yeah, for Funflix to come out and put the movie on with a daytime screen was much more expensive. I don't remember what the price was right offhand, but it was. I've not priced one for us to purchase for a daytime showing.
Well, if you can check into that,
Yeah.
that would be valuable to be able to start earlier. The other option might be put the screen within a shelter somehow where it's shaded a bit wherever it is, but that limits the enjoyment of being outside to watch it if you can't stage it right then.
Yeah, because the one that Funflix has is going to be very similar to the one that this price is for, and it would not fit in any of our shelters that we currently have.
Mm-hmm.
So.
The other problem was when the movie starts, when it gets dark.
Mm-hmm.
And so everybody was confused about that.
Yeah, we had the movie starting at dusk, so there were a couple of times that when the time, when the sun started to set earlier, and we would show the movie a little bit earlier. Some people were showing up later. Some people were showing up at 9 when the movie was almost halfway through. So, yeah,
exploring the options here, this is good. And this past year was sort of an ad hoc thing we did to try to get people outside during COVID, not knowing what was even going to happen in the summer because things weren't really opening back up at the time we started planning it, and then other communities did things too. So this has been an experiment. Now we've learned, and we can do it even better next year. So it's good that you're planning for all of this now. I think the calendar idea you've got there as to the number of things to do makes sense also, and having bands at Bechtold, movies at McDaniel makes sense. So, good work.
Thank you.
Good work to the committee, and thanks to Mr. Riley for serving.
I
asked Beth Gunderson today if she would put in our next email blast that we send out monthly that we have these citizen committees, and we're always looking for volunteers for them, of course, but we'll have an opening in this one we think coming up later this year. But if anybody's interested in it, or the finance committee, or serving in some other way, to let us know too. So maybe we'll get some other candidates for that too. So do you need approval from us as to anything right now?
Not yet.
No, not necessarily. I just wanted the calendar of events and the screen was really what I just wanted to make sure that we were okay to move forward with looking into that. That's all I have.
Very good. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. Tracy, what else have you got for us? Any road work going on this summer?
Just a little bit. So as you know, Cougar Mill is moving forward. The weather is affecting us a little. We are pouring concrete right now. We're looking at the end of this month to do the full depth reclamation. We're really going to be pushing the calendar in order to get this done and get it paved. But the guys are working as hard as they can. This time of year, you never know what you're going to get with weather. Obviously, they can't pour concrete in the rain, and they can't reclamate either. So, but we're still pushing to get this done. So I think we're going to make it. Let's pray for good weather. So other than that, I want to bring something to you tonight. Skylar, if you could put that up. I talked to Deepak today. I'd sent him something about MSD has sent me something and I went out and talked to them. They are looking to put a sewer line on Al Woods Lane. So Al Woods and Keller, that section is all septic. So obviously, all septic systems get inspected every year by Hamilton County Public Health. If you have problems, you have to fix it. Sometimes that can get very expensive. So a property owner contacted MSD, said we'd like to have sewer. So MSD started talking to all the neighbors. As you know, where Alwoods is, it's down a hill. Behind Alwoods, the terrain is very steep, goes down into a creek. They cannot put the sewer down there, so they have to run it uphill to Keller, out Keller, until they can hit the sewer, and it feeds by gravity. So in order to do that, this main has to be a forced main. So in order to do that, everybody's going to have a pump. So this sewer line will be going up Alwoods, and the sewer line will be full most of the time because it only pushes out what gets pushed into it. So this that you see in front of you is an odor control unit. And this odor control unit is filled with a bioxide solution that, I'm not a chemist, but they say it's not toxic. That is forced into the main every so often to take care of odors. So there is no odors for the community, for the neighbors. So the problem is this will be in the right-of-way. So as you can see, this one you're looking at, this is in Anderson Township. I went out and looked at this. There are 2 tanks here. We will only have one because this has 2 different chemicals. You can see in the background this has a shower because the chemicals that are in there are toxic. Mm-hmm. We will not need that because it's a different chemical that is not toxic. But the tank will be twice that big. It's 1,050 gallons, 74 inches high. So they are in design right now. And this is what they have come to us with. This is basically what they would like to put. As you can see, this is very close to the road. Alwoods does not have a curb line. So you're talking about some kind of structure here that's a foot, 18 inches behind the pavement with no curb. So my concern was liability, somebody running off the road, somebody hitting it. So I asked him who was pushing this. So they polled the area because to get to where they're at, they need at least 50% of the residents to approve of it before they even go to design. So there's 23 residents affected with this. 67% were in support of it. So that's why they've come to us, because they've gone as far as they can with design until we either approve it or we tell them, no, you need to get an easement on a private piece of property. Now, if they get an easement, it's going to take them a while. They would prefer not to get an easement just because it's easier for them to have it in the right-of-way. So my question was, is this like any other utility in the right-of-way, like a telephone pole, a transformer, or is there some kind of liability if somebody runs into these tanks and somebody gets hurt or, God forbid, killed? They said they would install bollards in front of them. The problem being that bollard is going to be right on the edge of the road. I mean, there is no room. So after it's approved or they go to get an easement, this is owned by MSD, so it's owned and maintained. It's supposedly maintained by the county. You know, the issues with MSD between the city and the county. There will be public hearings where everybody affected will be invited to the public hearing to give comments, but that won't be until design is complete. Right now they're only about 50% or 60%. I do have 60% drawings, but this dotted line is the edge of the pavement. You can see where it's going to be. Very close relationship. Right at the end of Alwoods, at the top of the hill by Keller.
So this will be on Alwoods, not on Keller.
This will be on Alwoods in our right-of-way, not
so
the
we own
county
Alwoods,
right-of-way.
not the county. All right.
And I asked them, well, since it's owned and maintained by the county, why can't it go on the county right-of-way on Keller? And there's a lot of drop-off there. They would prefer it to go on Alwoods just because it's flatter and easier.
Yeah. So if they own it, you mean they own the equipment, but we still own the ground underneath?
That's correct.
is there a possible arrangement where they own the ground and we cede that to them, and would that help with any liability concern? That's a question for Mr. Desai, I suppose. But
Mr. Desai, not me.
and would there be any reason to retain the right-of-way there otherwise anyway, if that thing's sitting on it? Are we ever going to need that? It's not like we're ever going to four-lane Elwoods. So.
Right. I mean, I think Mr. Kellums did a really good job of outlining what some of our issues are with it. The other issue with it is the current agreement that they have before us has no provision for insurance other than to the extent they damage the right-of-way in the installation process. They'll have insurance for that. As you know, because of the revised code provisions regarding indemnity, there's no indemnity clause in there for us. There's not even a liability clause in there. You know, as Mr. Kellums mentioned, you know, we've got an obligation to keep obstructions out of the right-of-way. Technically, 18 inches off the right-of-way, I guess, is off the right-of-way, but that
Off the
doesn't-
pavement.
It's off the pavement.
It's in the right of way.
Yeah, sorry, off the pavement, but it's in the right-of-way, and that doesn't give us the level of comfort that we would like with this. The other things that just cross our minds are that they're telling us the solution they're using isn't toxic. They're telling us it's not considered a hazardous chemical, but we don't have any independent verification of that. So let's say there was a wreck where that got hit and now there's a leak. I mean, under the contract, there's nothing holding them accountable. And, you know, if the EPA were to come in and determine that there was some type of remediation that needed to be done, they're not going to care that it's MSDs. They're going to look to us and say, you have to pay to remediate this. So, you know, and I can give you probably another half dozen concerns I have over it, and I think Mr. Kellums probably would share those concerns. We talked quite a bit about this. We don't want to not be facilitative of what it is that the residents want. On the other hand, this is going to benefit a group of individuals that want to get rid of septic systems, and their property may be just as suitable for the easement to put it on there. You know, MSD saying I'd prefer not to do that, would prefer to use your right-of-way, to me is just not an acceptable answer. You know, well, we'd prefer that you not use our right-of-way. So I'm not saying we're recommending that it be shut down and that there be an absolute no, but this is an ask that I think merits something more than the typical thing that would come through Tracy's department, you know, such as locating a utility pole or something of that nature. And it seemed prudent to bring it to the board and get the board's guidance on how the board would like to see this handled, because it is a very novel, you know, utility infrastructure that's being introduced into the township that's going to be here forever. Mm-hmm. And not something that, you know, we felt comfortable with just rubber stamping and moving along. We think the board should probably understand what's on the table, and it might even merit having MSD come in here and do a presentation. You know, why this particular solution? Are there other solutions to the potential odor problem? If this is the only solution, why is it not feasible to locate it somewhere else? Why does it have to be located here?
I think that's prudent to ask them to come in and demonstrate that. I have a few questions just from looking at the prototype photo there from the one in Anderson also.
Which is not as big as the one we're going to get.
Right, and the fence surrounding that one with the gap at the bottom looked nice, but there's a gap at the bottom, so children can get in there, other things could get in there. Who's going to keep that up? Does our zoning code actually control that if MSD is owning and operating?
It's in right away. It's right away, so maintenance department would maintain it.
Okay.
Or there would be an agreement with MSD.
There would be an agreement. They are responsible for all maintenance.
But assuming it's
if
not in the
they
right of
don't,
way, assuming it's not there and it is on a landowner's land too, but still visible, what control do we have? Do the usual zoning rules as to a fence in a yard or a maintenance building or outbuilding apply? These are all things to think about here. Who's paying for all this in the end too? Are the residents surcharged?
Are assessed.
Okay.
So I don't know what the total cost of this is, but he said the residents are assessed up to $12,000 a piece for every resident.
Okay.
So I don't know what time period that is spread out over.
Yeah.
I would imagine it's quite a few years.
So those residents might prefer that the township is putting it the right of way so it doesn't cost them acquisition money, of course, but yeah.
I would encourage him to put it in the county right away on Keller Road. Well, it may not be quite so convenient. I think it relieves us of the liability that we might have. So I would encourage him to look at that as a plan B to ensure that we don't have to worry about liability.
And my concern was noise also. I went out and looked at this. I've talked to the guy at Anderson. He said, to tell you the truth, I forgot it's there. I've never gotten one complaint.
Really?
But it's obviously a different area, as you can see here. Nice and residential flat. I mean, we're talking a wooded area.
Yeah.
Keller's, MSD is owned by the county or run by the county or run by the city. I don't know who owns them anymore, but it makes sense that it would be in their right of way to me.
Yeah.
Right, I agree.
Yeah, that makes sense. So.
And I asked them about insurance, and they said, well, we are self-insured as the city of Cincinnati, but he couldn't give me an answer as to what they would cover.
Their check will clear, is what he's saying.
Yeah, it's in the mail.
For now, yeah.
So I think, what we're looking for is some direction from the board tonight, and I'm hearing two things. One is that perhaps we have MSD come in and do a presentation on the need to locate it on Alwoods Lane. The other that I heard is, well, let's just tell them that they need to put it into the right of way on Keller Road.
I think they should come and present as to how wonderful it's going to look on Keller Road, or why it can't go there, and why we should consider anything else. I think that's what Mr. Weedman was saying essentially too, is that's where it should be. Mr. LaBarbera, what do you think? Yeah.
I don't think we need a motion on that. I think Mr. Kellums can contact them and get the appropriate point person to come out and do a presentation at a board meeting, correct?
Yes.
That shower on that picture, that's there for a reason.
Yeah, but that's a different
It's
one,
different-
like I said.
different
There's
unit.
different chemicals
Did a
there.
chemical burns
There
or
will not
whatever.
be a shower on ours.
Yeah. We don't want someone living in there.
It's still the chemical.
It's a different chemical.
Chemicals.
So it's not gonna,
They're saying it's a non-toxic
they're saying,
chemical.
Make it a pit.
So the MSDS sheet says to handle, you just use glasses and gloves. No need for face shield, suit, any of that. Unlike what is in there, which you need all protection, body protection there. Because that was my first question. Why is there a shower here? What do you got in these tanks? So.
All right.
all right.
Anything else, Tracy?
Yes, I have a resolution. We have some obsolete, we want to auction off some equipment that we are not in need of anymore. The resolution attached to it on the back is Exhibit A, dump truck, a couple mores. Then we have the old servers, the old phone equipment from the old system that's no longer in use. So I'll read the resolution. A resolution declaring township property as surplus and obsolete and authorizing its disposition, dispensing with a second reading, declaring an emergency.
Motion?
Second,
All right, we have a motion and a second. So am I correct that the goal here is to dispose of this? If we can sell it, we'll do that. If not, we'll
Yes,
junk
we're
it.
going to auction, attempt to auction them all first, and if we don't get anything, then they'll be disposed of.
Yeah. Okay. Any discussion from anyone? All right, Mr. Porter, would you call the roll?
Mr. LaBarbera?
aye.
Mr. James?
Aye.
Mr. Weedman?
Aye.
All right, anything else, Mr. Kellums?
No, sir, that's it.
All right, I'll just note the work is looking great on Kugler Mill. Sidewalks are already paved in some places, and the deadly curve there where it hits Montgomery Road has moved over a few feet, which is the best development of that entire property, I think. So
Yeah, there will be a
curve
turn
is a
lane there
killer.
to help
Yeah.
with that traffic.
Excellent. All right. Moving on then. Next we have Planning and Zoning Report. Mr. Miller.
Sir, no nuisance properties to report tonight, fortunately. Zoning Commission met on September 30th to discuss the proposed land use plan and some modest text amendments to our zoning resolution. I think there was some good, productive work on that, but we're not at a position yet where they were comfortable making a recommendation to move forward to a public hearing with the trustees. We actually added a policy area to focus on kind of fine-tuning development along Montgomery Road north of Galbraith and kind of up to Kennedy. So along that corridor that we've had some, we'll say, sensitive development issues in the last year. So we're focusing on that a little bit. We have the language together. I'm merging it all back so it can be vetted by them, and we're looking for county comments before we take it to trustees at this point. So that'll be coming.
So what does that mean as to fine tuning, though? I'm just curious. Is there something in mind specifically? I know there's been controversy about various proposals there next to the retail center where it used to be residential. We've looked at some of those, turned some down
so
there.
What we're doing is we're actually defining a development corridor along Montgomery Road that would allow for office institutional uses, but it actually restricts. So even though the land use plan calls for it to be office, it's not unlimited office as defined by the zoning resolution. It would be restricted in intensity, and it essentially call it. I think we're at 8,000 square feet of net floor area per acre, for office. Reduction of maximum height of 2 stories, residential roofs, and architecture where available, and it essentially encourages people to use the PUD process as opposed to any type of straight zoning, Euclidean zoning for future development along that corridor.
Very
so reasonable, still promoting development, yet yet focusing on establishing that balance between pro-development and protection of existing residential areas. Really trying to push for that additional buffer area and transition. So the language is done. I just have to merge it into the document, get county comments, and take it back to them.
Let me encourage you, if this is possible, to contact some of the people in the neighborhood behind there who are always so vocal when there are proposals there to take a look at this.
I've actually had numerous contacts with some residents there, and also their attorney that they still have on retainer. So I'm working with that neighborhood.
Great, thank you.
Yep. Other than that, we do have a date change for our October zoning commission meeting. We were not going to have quorum on the 12th, so that's been moved to the 21st. And no business in front of zoning Board of Zoning Appeals. And that's all I have.
All right. Very good. Any questions for Mr. Miller from anybody? All right, thanks. Moving on, Law Director report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Other than what we discussed about the Alwoods Lane project, the only other thing I would mention to the board and, of course, to the residents is there are a number of pieces of legislation moving through the State Assembly that have impact on home rule power. So would just encourage everybody to keep track of those and to give your input to your local representatives as you see fit regarding your views on those items, but there are several of them out there that are of importance that are moving through the State Assembly.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Mr. Desai? All right. Administrator report.
Okay, first up is the annual ritual of accepting the rates that have to do with the levies. as a part of the tax budget process. This is the way it usually goes. We submit the budget, they come back and tell us what they think it's going to be, and then they send this document back for the board to adopt. It's a resolution, and I will read it. Resolution accepting the amounts and rates as determined by the Budget Commission and authorizing the necessary tax levies and certifying them to the county auditor.
Motion.
Second.
Any discussion? All right, Mr. Porter, will you call the roll?
Mr. LaBarber?
Aye.
Mr. James?
Aye.
Mr. Weedman?
Aye.
Next, I have a resolution that transfers some funds from the general fund to the general obligation debt service fund. This is done every year. The principal and interest is paid out of that general obligation fund, and the general fund transfers the money to it. So it's time to do that because we'll be making these payments shortly. The resolution reads, a resolution authorizing and directing transfers of funds to reconcile budgets and appropriations and dispensing with a second reading.
Motion.
Second.
All right, I'll just note for the record, the transfer here is $37,499.16. Any discussion from anyone? If not, Mr. Porter, will you call the roll, please?
Mr. LaBarber?
Aye.
Mr. James?
Aye.
Mr. Weedman?
Aye.
Thank you. I have a couple of large POs. First one is to A&A Safety, and this is for the putting the crosswalks back on Montgomery Road. You approved this with a resolution on June 1st of this year, and so now we're just exercising the purchase order. The amount is $238,606.50.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Just refresh my memory here. I haven't gone back and looked at the resolution. This is the amount we approved going in. I had in my head we were spending more like 140 or so on this.
Nope, 238,000 approved.
Okay. All right. And is that done in terms of what we're paying for? The white stripes aren't back there yet.
It's not done.
Okay. Is this the final payment for this, though, that we're approving?
This is just the PO.
Okay, to be ready to pay it. Okay. All right. Any further discussion from anyone?
So we're not going to pay this until they do it.
Correct.
That's the key part.
Sure.
Yeah.
The purchase order just gives him the ability to move forward.
Yes. All right. Mr. Porter, will you call the roll?
Mr. LaBarber?
Aye.
Mr. James?
Aye.
Mr. Weedman?
Aye.
And we have a purchase order for Bowling Green State University. This was Fire Officer 3 class for 16 firefighters, and it comes to $6,300.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? Mr. Porter?
Mr. LaBarber?
Aye.
Mr. James?
Aye.
Mr. Weedman?
Aye.
We looked back into the minutes, and we did not officially cancel the November 2nd meeting, so we're going to ask the board to entertain that this evening. Staff is prepared to be able to handle all of our business with one meeting in November. If something comes up that out of the ordinary, then we'll reserve the right to try to call a special meeting. But like the board to pass a motion to cancel the November 2nd.
I'll make a motion we cancel the November 2nd meeting.
And second. I'll second it.
All right. And just for the record, that is election day, and I think 2 of the trustees here will be very busy that day. So any further discussion as to that? Mr. Porter?
Mr. LaBarber?
Aye.
Mr. James?
Aye.
Mr. Weedman?
Aye.
I have nothing further.
All right. Any questions for Mr. Work? All right. Fiscal Officer report.
Yes, we had receipts of $523,944.34, disbursements of $332,117.04. A complete listing of the receipts and disbursements is available in the packet.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? Mr. Porter, call the roll, please.
Mr. LaBarbera?
Aye.
Mr. James?
Aye.
Mr. Weedman?
Aye.
All right, trustee comments. Mr. Weedman.
I don't have any today.
All right. Mr. LaBarbera.
Okay, just want to mention that Kenwood Town Center welcoming a group of new stores. Some are opening their first ever locations in the state of Ohio. English Shoemaker, Dr. Martin's opened a store on the first level near Dillard's. California-based women's clothing chain, Windsor, coming to the mall. Special occasion dresses, casual wear styles, shoes, accessories. High-end watch retailer, Watches of Switzerland, opening its first location in Ohio. At Kenwood, mattress showroom, Purple, opening a store carrying comfort products, mattresses, pillows, etc. And a Capital One Cafe is coming to the mall. Combination of a coffee shop and a banking center. People are free to go inside, book a free money coaching session, getting banking assistance, or grab a coffee on your way to work. That's all I have.
All right. Just a few comments from me. First of all, I'd like to thank Ms. Carpenter for bringing all of that to our attention about what's going on in High Point, and we will be following up on that. So thank you very much for doing that. And thanks for serving everybody else in your community by coming down here to do that, to tell us, so thank you. A few other things. There is an election coming up November 2nd, of course, and the County Board of Elections needs poll workers. Each party typically brings in poll workers. I know the Republican Party has been sending out entreaties to me and many others saying, please help us find poll workers. It's actually a paid position for people to go out and work the polls. The Democratic Party, I'm certain, is looking for people too. So if someone out there watching or someone here in the audience knows someone who's interested in being a paid poll worker that day, it's not a partisan position while you're there. You're supposed to be impartial in what you're doing. But please contact the Board of Elections in Hamilton County and help out with that if you can, because this is something we all need there at the polls to make it easy for everyone to vote. It is, of course, election season, so it's silly season. So check out everything you're told that you hear from someone or that you hear someone said. There's all kinds of crazy stuff going around. One crazy thing that went out from some radio host to one of our neighborhoods, I hope isn't going to jeopardize the levy their school system's having now. It had to do with money, and now people are commenting on nextdoor.com that their school system seems to have plenty of money, and I don't think that's necessarily the case there, but check things out that you're told anyway. Don't believe anything any politician tells you. So with that noted, the date change we have on the calendar for the Zoning Commission, Mr. Miller already mentioned. Check our calendar for anything else that's going on. And I'd like to thank everyone who came out this evening to speak publicly. We do have an executive session on the agenda here, so I'm going to move now to adjourn into executive session with Law Director Deepak Desai as permitted by Ohio Revised Code Section 121.22 to discuss sale of township properties.
And I believe
there's
manager.
an additional item.
Oh, there is. Oh, I'm sorry. And secondarily, and matters required to be kept confidential by federal law.
Second.
All right. Any discussion? Mr. Porter, we call the roll.
Mr. LaBarbera?
Aye.
Mr. James?
Aye.
Mr. Weedman?
Aye.
All right. I will note that it is currently 8:12 p.m. on October 5th, 2021. We are adjourning into executive session, and will return, and we will invite the trustees, Mr. Porter, Mr. Desai, Mr. Warwick, Mr. Kellums, and Mr. Miller.
And please invite Beth Gunderson.
And Beth Gunderson as well. All right. Thank you.
how long ago did?
Got everybody we need here? All right. Everybody ready? Elliot, you good? All right. We are back from executive session at 8:53 p.m. on Tuesday, October 5th. Mr. Porter, would you call the roll, please?
Yes. Mr. LaBarbera?
Here.
Mr. James?
Here.
Mr. Weedman?
Present.
And do we have any motions?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion that we authorize the addition of the drug Rezurock, spelled R-E-Z-U-R-O-C-K, to be added as an exception to our health plan through December 31st, 2021.
Second.
Any discussion? Mr. Porter, will you call the roll, please?
Mr. LaBarbera?
Aye.
Mr. James?
Aye.
Mr. Weedman?
Aye. And I will make a motion to adjourn.
There's a second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And we are adjourned at 8:54 p.m. on Tuesday, October 5th. Everybody stay safe. Thanks.